Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for, coming back from lunch. We promise we'll be active and we'll, prevent you from going into your little post-lunch nap. So we'll have activities and stuff. Good. Before we start, I kind of like to get the controversial questions out of the way so that we can focus on the rest. Ski or snowboard?
I snowboard, but technically I also ski. So it's a loaded question.
And in the room, so this is the activity, ski or snowboard by show of hands. Ski. Okay. Snowboard? It's a skier thing. See, that's how we gather data.
Oh yeah, you are.
You're welcome.
As of
now
that
you can
question,
go back.
you're all in our database.
You are all in the Vail database as of now.
Awesome. Thank you for capturing that data on behalf of Vail Resorts.
Always happy to help.
Yeah.
Great. Well, as we start, should you talk a little bit more about what Vail is? It's not just a town, it's a lot of other things, and also yourself. For
sure. So for your all awareness, Vail is not just Vail Resort. There's an S at the end of it. We are the world's largest owner and operator of ski resorts. So we operate currently 40 different resorts across Canada, Australia, Colorado, Tahoe. We own a bunch on the East Coast, Mount Snow, Hunter, and then most recently, a lot of our acquisitions, which is funny because the resort map's now completely inaccurate, because we've started buying resorts in Switzerland. So we own 2 resorts in Europe. Second one closed, I want to say, probably 3 weeks ago. So couple more things about Vail Resorts. We were nominated this year for a Fast Company Innovative Company Award, top 10 for our groundbreaking My Epic app. So you used to basically get a lift ticket or a hard card season pass. You can bypass that completely now, and everything is loaded onto the app. It's all low Bluetooth energy technology. The other pieces that we've been doing is recognized this year, 2 years in a row, for one of the most trustworthy companies by Newsweek.
Oh, so your data is
Vail
safe.
Resorts in a nutshell. Yeah.
Great. Well, and a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I have the privilege of getting to run our marketing technology applications department on the IT side. I've been with Vail for 12 years. I spent, honestly, 10 years on the marketing side as the director of channel analytics and enterprise statistical testing, and then now moved over to IT to help do our Amperity integration, all of our MarTech, and everything that's an outbound marketing channel runs through my amazing team back at Vail.
So when we have a Q&A at the end, he's the guy to ask all the questions.
Yeah, if you're getting blown up by emails, I can tell you exactly why and how those things function.
Great. Well, thanks for that. And I think through, we were looking at the map, you were talking about all the brands. I think it really shows that the amount of complexity you have to deal with. So it's great for that session because it's strategy for multi-brands.
Yeah.
How did you do it? But first, what were the challenges? What motivated you to say hey, we need to get on that Lakehouse CDP journey now?
Yeah. So over the course of the last few years, and Vail is a growth-oriented company, so we've been acquiring resorts since I started. I mean, when I got there, we had 5, and now we're 40. So it's just an exponential increase. And the running joke is that it literally is exponential. One purchase then turned into 3 resorts at once, then turned into 5 resorts. Then the last one is let's do 17. Oh crap. So yeah, we candidly we hit scaling issues with our MarTech systems. So we were just running into barriers left and right. We couldn't connect our digital performance to an email campaign, to an SMS, to a push campaign, let alone try to integrate everything into a new app. So we just needed something better. And as we were going through the evaluation process, it was really about, let's look at our MarTech stack over the course of the few years and say, not just how do I solve an email problem, how do I solve an SMS problem, push problem, but how can I do omni-channel marketing and for Vail at scale across all these different brands in a much better way. So the use cases that we're getting from our marketing partners are much more oriented towards not just do a batch blast email, but hey, if that email then triggers this media campaign, then triggers this in-app experience, how do I do that at scale? Because we grew so fast that everything that worked when we had 20 resorts isn't working currently when we now have 40, and then we're not going to stop. I mean, we bought a resort 3 weeks ago. It's just going to keep going and going.
Yeah, that makes sense. The challenge of the central
Yeah, it was all predicated around we have to centralize. And our marketing teams and our IT teams are all centralized owners of our data and our processes.
Good. And how is it going for you now?
I thought you'd never ask. It's much better. So Amperity is the hub. We have one single tenant. We bring all of our information from our source, point of sale systems, our transaction information. We bring our customer data from our customer information. We've got our web data in there. We've got our email data, SMS data. We bring pretty much everything to Amperity. And I think the fun thing that we got to do on the Vail side, back to the fact that, my department is running the MarTech side, is we also use Amperity for our go-to-market. So when we start to launch campaigns, we launch them from Amperity. We don't go to a third party here, and then do segmentation or changes. Everything is coming from that central hub. Some of the benefits that we've seen is, we've become exponentially more efficient when our teams don't have to go tool by tool to really get into saying like, oh, I'm making a tweak here, I'm making a tweak here. Everything is now centralized in that one location, and we've hit like a 30% efficiency rate in some of our go-to-market campaigns just because we don't have to jump tool by tool. We don't have to go to each one of these pieces to make the same change in like a slightly different nuanced way for digital or a slightly different way for the SMS or the in-app experience.
Yeah. And I think that really helped the volumes too, as you were saying.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, we have way overgrown from a volume perspective. Like we're up, I want to say 20% in email, our SMS push and in-app campaigns, which candidly have never had really the chance to connect to this much data or this much experience, are now up 100, 200% in send volume, and then we'll figure out the budgeting on that, next cycle. But like we're going to get past that point. But yeah, it's been great, and like honestly, we could not do that without that centralized orchestration and the centralized ability to run an omni-brand, omni-channel tenant, to be able to pull in all those pieces together and then send those at scale all at once to each different channel.
Good. Well, all is well now. End
yeah,
of session.
We'll
go
look
look by
totally
Amperity.
cool. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Super simple. Yeah. No. This white patch here is email confirmations. Like it's not that simple. Yeah.
Well, it's not that simple,
Yeah.
but decided to make it a little bit more simple to explain to you how, Tom managed that. So Ben Nelson was telling us, what always works? It's like people, process, technology. That's what we're going to do. So it's easy to follow after lunch. So we'll start with people. What made Vail different? What made you successful in your people organization where others would have maybe, failed at the same project?
Yeah, so we've run for years now a program called the Data Driven Roadmap. And I was started getting involved in, I want to say about 8 years ago, but it's been even going since prior to that. And what that is a combined marketing and IT process and project that it never really ends. Like we have steercos every week, we talk to each other, and we really talk about what are the marketing trends, what are the IT trends, and how does that come together so we can go to bat for certain tools, projects, and like initiatives in a very comprehensive way that both of us are aligned on what tool, what system, what use case are we going to go tackle over the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, et cetera. And that's how we got to the point where we all recognized as a combined marketing and IT side, we needed a CDP. We needed orchestration because I can't keep having our email system tell me one thing, our digital personalization system tell me a different thing. And finally, we all aligned on, going through the process of evaluating, RFI and going through CDPs and coming to this point. The other interesting fact about the data-driven roadmap is that we have a really close partnership with our marketing teams to say, what are the skill sets that you all need in the future? Like, do you need SQL proficient individuals on the marketing side? And like, candidly, my background is from marketing before I came to IT. And that's been a big benefit on the IT side because I know how go-to-market works. I know how creative development works. I know how all of these different campaigns get deployed. And I can start to help bridge that between the two different teams to say, let's have a marketing individual in the IT world that knows all the pain points of the process. And likewise, let's have technically proficient people on the marketing side because that's where the industry was going. And that's where we really lean on them from SQL coding and development to go to market for all of those brands in an omni-channel, single campaign way.
Yeah, I think it really shows us like really not a silo, but very much the matrix of the organization.
Yeah.
You were talking about the RFI. I think that's a good transition to process. So how did you do it? So you had the right people, you kind of like mix and match them, metrics match across the organization, and then you started the journey with the RFI. How did that go?
Yeah, the RFI, and I apologize for Amperity. We made it very hard on you as we went through this process.
I wasn't there. Oh.
You were fine. Yeah. So we evaluated the entire industry, and I think what was interesting is like we ended up having 17 different companies in our RFI, and we were evaluating media companies, like the big tech companies. We're understanding like SMS, push, in-app experience, digital experience, and that came from like getting all of our team's feedback and going back and forth with 70 people provided me feedback on what CDP should we bring in, and there's a huge evaluation process. And I think that paid spades as we got into, okay, it's time for implementation. Are we all on board? And then everyone's like, yes, I'm on board. You chose the tool that we selected. Why would I not be? So I think that was great to see. And one of the other pieces, because Stitch was such a core component of the process and the ROI, that we actually had our analytics department run the Stitch evaluation process. So they put Amperity through all the different evaluation process, because Vail is predicated as a data-driven company, kind of like a data-driven tech company nested under the ski pretense. And we did 7 rounds of Stitch and had the marketing analytics team actually lead that versus like an IT technical team to make sure that they had the buy-in from the start to say, yep, we're using Stitch, it passes all of our tests, let's go, let's start turning campaigns on.
I think that's that kind of like going from the RFI to the change management a bit seamlessly through the team is super interesting. So now you have the tool, you've done the change management. What is the day-to-day? Like, what's the process right now?
Yeah, so I wasn't nervous for this presentation except for this one question. And it's not because I can't answer it. It's because there are 2 phenomenal individuals in the audience who know this so much better than I do. And if I get this wrong, I will never hear the end of it on Monday when we're back in the office. So I will do my best.
If you get this wrong, we have a big spotlight that will go on top of them, and they will have to just give you
get
lines
in here,
and stuff.
Yeah, come on up. So Vail starts with, because we're multi-brand and because we have a hospitality division, an F&B division, core lift access, mountain ops, we have a shuttle service, we have transportation, all of those different lines of business by each individual resort, because we in our world, a resort is a brand, go through and start, what are the metrics and what are the key goals that they want to go hit for each year, and then we break that down into phases. So what's our summer phase? We're currently in a sales cycle for spring pass sales. So if you haven't bought your season pass, you got a week, prices go up, changes, everything. That's the amount of sales that I get into. But yeah, so like we evaluate spring sales, summer, and then especially as we get into like season start for next year, we know what the brand goals are. We know what all of those are broken into phase, and then each phase then gets turned into, in our world, it's basically a campaign brief. And what we do is we basically say, okay, of that sales goal, what are the campaigns we want to enable? What are the metrics we want to see? How is this going to turn into a tangible audience development, a tangible campaign development? And we go through that cycle by cycle by cycle, each phase, each brand, each line of business, and that turns into a very systematic way that we can operationalize all of the different brands that we have to go to market at an omni-channel lens, specifically at the right time, at the right, right location, et cetera. Yeah.
And I think in the process, what is interesting is also your use of SQL. So we've been talking a lot this morning about like point and click. But I think what is interesting with you all is that you're really agnostic. You're very SQL, but also point and click. But talk a bit more about the flexibility that brings.
Yeah, so when we evaluated Amperity, there's like 2 camps in the industry. It's like, should we do just WYSIWYG, and should we do like drag and drop stuff? Or like, honestly, back to the technical proficiency that we have on the marketing side, their preference is SQL coding. So it's been great to see, because then with Amperity, what we end up doing is they code whatever they want, and then that can get turned into, I'm going to take this data, orchestrate it to each one of these different channels, and send that out the door in a single experience, a single click of a button to pump all that information out. The other interesting thing is that we have an in-house data science team, and they do predictive models, they do wait time calculations for each lift, and what we saw is we were able to bring in the Amperity predictive modeling, the data science modeling from our team into Amperity, and then get that out the door through these different campaigns. And what used to be a siloed campaign where it's like, we're going to use that model just in email, now, because we can do all that coding, we have the flexibility to orchestrate that to different channels. we can put that model in front of people in any different medium that we want. So like the thing that's been awesome to see is that we had an experience in a data science model that at time of transaction, we look at the product you just bought. We then go and say, yep, this is the next one that we think you're most likely to purchase. We send that directly in our confirmation email seconds after that person has purchased that product. What made Amperity so powerful and the Profile API so powerful is that that's driving one channel. We now do the same thing at time of the page render for confirmation with that same exact product. So now the user within that experience basically sees a recommendation. 5 seconds later, when their confirmation shows up, they see the exact same recommendation on a product that they bought seconds before.
Yeah, I love that. It's great how you kind of like adapted the technology to your people that you had and the processes and making it better. So drives us to the last piece, technology. What do you use today for identity resolution and segmentation, I wonder?
Oh my gosh, I didn't know you'd ask that. So Amperity is our enterprise identity resolution service. We originally, obviously, as we went through the data-driven roadmap, the whole thing was predicated off us choosing Amperity as a MarTech tool. And what we're doing now is we're pumping through the fantastic Databricks connection that they were alluding to, all of that IDR service back into our data lake. So AmpID is considered the record of truth as we go through now all of our business reporting, and now we're merging all of those marketing aspects with all of that business aspect to really be able to unify, like, this campaign had a specific effect on this line of business, on this number of skier visits, on this sales goal for XYZ LOB. And yeah, it's been great to be able to have that now in that system and have that immediate interaction with our core database that is pumping out all of our executive reporting, all of our shareholder reporting, and actually having that specifically be tied to AmpID over the course of the next, I want to say 6 to 12 months will be the full migration period.
Yeah, that was super interesting. I love how you've been able to go not just from kind of like the insights of marketing, but also included it in the whole GTM. It's like it's really like included there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like the status right now. But if we talk about the future, and we're all a little bit of geeks here, so it's like, what's the future tech you're going to implement? Like, what's your next step there?
That's a big question. So new this year, we're launching a brand new line of business, which is a subscription model for rentals. And it's really interesting because instead of having to lug your skis or your snowboard across the country as you go to Vail or you go to Whistler, you now can pay a subscription service and you can choose online whatever ski you want and have that at the day that you go skiing just waiting for you at the base of the resort, or they'll bring it to your hotel room. Some of the other stuff that we're getting into is, obviously I alluded to Europe. So Europe is a big growth market and it's a massive skier population, which is our next foray, which is why we now own 2 resorts there. My Epic app, as we integrate even further with Amperity Profile API and all the different digital personalization effects that we can do. Creative AI is on everyone's roadmap, and I think that's something that we can figure out to scale our creative development. And yeah, the list goes on in terms of the amount of work that we're going through. It's pretty amazing to be at a ski company with that much investment into technology and people and process that listens to at the time feedback of 70 individuals to say this is what we need to drive this business forward.
Yeah, and drive the business for your customers. You're kind of like not doing rent the runway for your skis and making their life easier.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I asked enough questions, so we'll see if there is anybody else in the room who has some question from Thomas on Vail and everything we've discussed. There are mics circulating around.
I'm going through this. Yesterday we launched one of that exact campaign. So we did kind of in a similar vein as like the Spotify end of season recap. We do an end of season ski recap. It was an email campaign, so core attributes, core data coming from Amperity, which sends to our ESP. The other thing on the digital note and kind of the push SMS note is that same campaign was multi-orchestrated to both the SMS service provider as well as we have the digital API integrated into our app. So all the customer information, as I click send, goes to each one of those channels. So when a user actually shows up and clicks that email or gets that push notification, opens up the app, it's same number of days skied, same vertical feet, same top resort that you skied at. So the user experience is seamless, and the integration for us is all driven by that API. In that project that I alluded to, we actually went from kind of a single stack approach to actually going best in class. So we actually broke that apart where they are different platforms. And in this case, we've got one SMS in-app experience platform and one ESP platform. So it is kind of broken apart where you have to make sure that they're ready to receive that data. But in our world, it's still very seamless because we've already built those integrations out. But yeah, it's not one single platform that's orchestrating all of that. Yep, everything is orchestrated centrally from Amperity, and then the same data sets are being pumped out to each individual platform. And within, like, for example, the push notification and like the in-app experience piece, we have to make sure that, like, when I see a number of day per person for each one of those experiences, the creative is ready within that platform, or in the digital experience side, like the app will receive this and do a specific thing for it. But instead of having to say, let's orchestrate that data, let's go orchestrate the same thing in our ESP, let's go orchestrate the same thing in our mobile platform, and then so on and so on. Now it comes from a central location, and the time to do that, back to the conversation about like speed and efficiency, then is specifically reduced because now I'm just orchestrating tiny bits and pieces versus the whole segmentation and the whole go-to-market. We did, and I think the tiny asterisk on that is that we don't reduce or truncate like the legacy point of sale IDs, but I think the thing to note is that because we have grown through acquisition, we've onboarded so many point of sale systems on like at every one of those acquisitions, is that we keep those, but Amperity is now merging all of those records to be the master record, so I don't have duplication from one resort point of sale system versus a different resort point of sale system. So I think it is the master record of truth, but what I don't want to do is fully truncate just all those other systems, because I mean, we're all in IT and nerd speak here. Like the second you remove an ID from some system, like 4 systems down is going to crash. So we're going to keep that, obviously. So, but AmpID, for all intents and purposes in our world, is the record of truth in our database, core reporting, as well as all of our marketing initiatives.
I'm Natalie. I'm from the trade desk. I'd like to be your best friend in life and work. I'm more curious of, obviously you have many resorts. How do you use Amperity as a way to, you see signals obviously that maybe the majority go to Vail, but how do you get them to maybe see Switzerland as an opportunity to trigger to other resorts? Because I assume obviously all records per mountain are in the same arena. So like how do you use those to drive traffic to other mountains?
It's interesting because in our world, we do see triggers and scan. Our main metric is skier scans or skier visits. So in our world, like I'll see people ski at Breck, or I'll see people ski at Vail or Whistler or Stevens Pass or Hunter or any of those. And what we can do is actually take a look at those skier scans, see if they have like a multi-resort experience. So some people have skied with us 3, 4, 5 different resorts over the course of a year, or the course of 2 years. We turn that into propensity models, and then we basically say this person seems like a person that might turn into in your point, a Switzerland skier. Or we also have, everyone's got geo-demographics, so I can say like, East Coast to Switzerland's exponentially easier than California to Switzerland, and so on. So we can basically take all that information, figure out the way we want to use it, and then turn that into potentially, this market or this specific, person might go to Switzerland, but candidly, like Europe is becoming the next thing we need to focus. So like our bread and butter has been predominantly North American marketing.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
It's delightful.
Appreciate it.